to the Sports Legends, where you're going to get the most in-depth sports breakdowns on YouTube. We're your host, Bull and P, and we're former Division I football players. Today, we're going to be sharing our 5 sleeper teams in the SEC with you. And we broke this list down. Really, we could have put a lot of teams on this list, P, because the SEC is so deep from top to bottom. But we broke this thing down based off of how teams performed in 2024, what they added in the offseason, and what we think that they're going to look like in 2025. As always, y'all, please do make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And we're going to start off with the first team right here, P. It's going to be the Arkansas Razorbacks. And they went 7-6 last season. They finished number 11 in the SEC. Their offense finished number 10 in the entire country, which is really good. A lot of folks didn't know that Arkansas had a good offense, but Bobby P is the OC. So anytime he's, in charge of the offense, it's going to be one of the best in the entire country. They also have Sam Pittman as their head coach. And wherever he's at, the offensive lines are always going to be good. Those two things go hand in hand. And, I think that their offense will kind of pick up where it left off in 2025. Now, one of their biggest issues, P, was with their defense. It was ranked number 73. And the main thing with them was, their pass defense. It was like 110th or something in the entire country. T. Will, I feel like, does a really good job as the DC, but he's going to have to get some things figured out. How much of that was on the talent? How much of that was based off of his scheme? He will give you a game where, Arkansas will play over their head, or his defense will play over their head for one game. But in some of the other ones versus very similar style teams, they just lay eggs. So they got to find that consistency. But I do think that maybe they'll find that in this offseason. And they lost 20 players to the transfer portal, but they also added 20. Obviously, several key players that y'all can see listed right here. But P, why did you want to put Arkansas in our top 5 as a sleeper team from the SEC?
Well, I just think they're a team that was really close last year. Despite the record, I think they were, 7-6 last season, something like that. And, I think at least two or three of those games could have easily went the other way. You look at Texas A&M, was a game that they're right there in. They're a team that was very competitive even in their losses last year. And I think it being Bobby P's first year there as their OC, the offense, I think, will continue to get better. You got Kalen Green coming back. If you don't know about him, he's a 6'6", 235-pound guy, can run, probably like a 4-5 type guy, athletic, can throw the ball probably 75-plus yards. Can make all the throws. It's only going to get better his second year in this system. I think they have a really good running attack as well. Returning A.J. Green was a huge deal for them, who kind of flirted with that transfer portal. I think actually did commit to Oklahoma State before deciding to come back. So getting him back is huge. And then you look at the guy, Braylon Russell, was a true freshman last year. I think he was about 6'2", 240. This guy is solid, and he actually runs that big, which is kind of funny to say, but a lot of times guys are that big, they don't run that big. He runs that big. So getting him back for his second season in college football, he's going to be a big-time playmaker, I think, for them as well. And then you see the pieces they added, man. I think Omega Blake's a guy, veteran. I think he's going to be like a redshirt senior type guy, a Riley veteran coming in here from, I want to say, UNC Charlotte, if I'm not mistaken. Good size, 6'2", like 190. Can run all the routes in the route tree, knows how to find space, has good hands, pretty physical presence on the outside as well. So I think he'll be a good piece for him. And then kind of bolstering their offensive line for a guy like Corey Robinson, who's also a veteran, I believe, coming in from USC, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's a good piece for them. Now, like you touched on, I think the defense is where you want to see them improve. They've added some pieces too, man. You look at on the D-line, they've added a guy, Justin Boone from Florida, who, if you walk Florida, you probably saw him. He wore number 1 for those guys. He's a big, physical-looking athlete, DN type guy. Was one of their better players last year, I think, on Florida's D-line. So not sure why he wanted to transfer, but Arkansas adding him to their defense, I think, is a big move for those guys. And then they add a big-time safety in Connie Walker, or I call him safety. He can really play anywhere in the secondary. 6'2", 205. Very versatile body. I believe he's from Oklahoma, I want to say, is where he was at last season. So he's got to do a lot of different things for you. Whether you want to put him in the nickel, at corner, or even at safety, I think he could play in those positions as well for you. So, like what they've added. We'll see how big of a jump that defense takes, and kind of the second year under this guy. But I think a very promising team, and I think a manageable schedule if they can maybe pull an upset or two. Texas, maybe A&M or Notre Dame, Tennessee, whatever. Those are going to be some tough games for them, but I think they have the talent to give those teams some problems as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at how their schedule starts, they got 2 cupcakes. Then they had to go to Oxford to see Ole Miss, and Ole Miss killed them last season, 63-31, something like that. So, had they gotten that defense adjusted, where they're not going to be giving up 60 points? Now, I don't know if Ole Miss is going to be the same team because they're losing a lot of players too. But they're all like, Ole Miss lives and dies inside of the transfer portal. So we'll see how everything looks. This is going to be, pre-spring portal, and there will be some, maybe more players that will come and go, things like that. But if they can get off to a, very, very tall task, but they can get off to a 3-0 start, and, I would actually say 4-0 and, hosting Notre Dame in that, 5th or 6th week right there, man, if they can get started like that, then yeah, this is a team that you would think should be, in a mix to maybe make it to the playoffs, really all based off of where's Ole Miss going to be ranked at preseason. I'm sure that Notre Dame is going to be top 10, and rightfully so. And then, like you said, you look at Tennessee, you look at A&M, Auburn, there's a lot of their schedule is heavier on the back end. So they have to get off to a good start if they want to, be a potential playoff team. But let's take it to the next one right here, P, unless you have some more thoughts on them.
No, man. I just, like I said, and a lot of it depends on how these teams going to look like. Who is Tennessee going to be? Who is Notre Dame going to be, right? Who is A&M going to be? Auburn. These are teams, LSU. These are teams that we don't really know exactly who they're going to be. So that kind of plays into it as well. Because if those teams end up being the best versions of themselves, that is a tough schedule. But you just don't really know. We have to see kind of when the season gets started for these guys.
Yeah, and then, it's something that we both touched on, but for them, I think we're both on the exact same page with it. The defense. If the defense can, I would say what they were 73 in the country last year. If they could get to like the top 30s, I think that Arkansas could win 10 or more games because the offense is going to be fine. That's not going to be any issue. They're going to run the football, which is great. Like, playoff teams have got to be able to run the ball and stop the run. I think that they stopped the run pretty well on defense. But if they can get the pass defense fixed with some, added pressure, so pass rushers, they're doing a pretty good job of adding some guys inside of the secondary. I don't think that they're quite done yet. They might need to go out and add some more tackles, some guys that can actually get after the passer at tackle because they lost a lot of that talent from last season. So those are, I think that that's the main concern with them. And heck, if they don't get that defense fixed, I could see them being back in the exact same spot in 2025. All right, so let's go on to the next team. Let's talk about Texas A&M. Really, really good. I would say a very talented team. I love Coach Elko. He's a guy that is defense first. He was the DC at A&M before he went on to Duke and had a whole lot of success there in the ACC. But walking back home, he goes 8-5 his first year at A&M. They finished number 9 in the SEC. So again, very, very talented team. They have the number 49 offense, the number 63 defense. I would expect, P, for that to get corrected in a major way because, again, man, we're talking about Elko, who is a defensive-minded coach. I wouldn't be surprised to see them take that jump to make it into the top 30 next season. And if that happens, bringing back, guys like, Reed and all that. I mean, they've got a whole lot of talent on their team. They went out and added more. They actually lost 19 players to the transfer portal. They added 14. Most of the players that these teams are losing, it won't be guys that you really need. It's guys that you probably pushed out. But I think they had to make some room to bring in some very, very big names. Obviously bringing in a guy like Micah Hudson, who was at Texas Tech. Also bringing in KC Concepcion from NC State. That's 2 dynamic playmakers on the outside that, I feel like inside of this system are going to flourish. And also, I think that Mario Craver, he's another one, wide receiver from Mississippi State. Looked really good there, playing on a team that didn't, wasn't doing a whole lot with their offense, but he was one of the bright spots to it. So I think that they've got some good things working. And if you look at them, if you look at their front seven, adding guys like TJ Searcy from Florida. Florida lost a lot of talent, especially up front, but they still have plenty of it left. We might get to them here in just a minute. Just several other players. I also think to bring in Julian Humphrey from UGA at cornerback. That's going to be big because, P, we both kind of feel like this season in the SEC, there's so many good quarterbacks. Every single team has a very good quarterback. So I think that the offenses are going to be good. It's going to be about the teams that can stop those offenses. So the teams with the best defenses will be the ones with the best chances, I feel like, to win the SEC, kind of, taking it back to the 90s with the SEC. But so, we will see what they do. But what are your thoughts with A&M?
Man, a very talented team. They've been talented really since Jimbo Fisher has been there and brought in some of those great recruiting classes. Now, a lot of those guys did transfer out, and some of those guys have gone to league, whatever, but there's still a lot of talent on that roster. And, Mike Elko, year 2 for him, you expect this team to take a big jump in year 2. He did a great job year 1. I want to say Marcel Reed's his first name, Marcel, the quarterback, him coming back next season. Expect him to take a big jump as well in this offense. Very dynamic with his legs. And anytime you have a mobile quarterback like that, that's a tough matchup really for any defense. Going to keep D coordinators up at night because he can, even when you're right, he'll make you wrong. So, I think him coming back's huge, man. Now they did lose some pieces. They lost Noah, I forget his last name, but Noah Thomas to UGA, and so I mean that's a huge loss. But I think they more than make up for it. Micah Hudson, big time guy at Texas Tech. Casey Concepcion, big time guy at NC State. Mario Craver, another big time guy. So they've added some pieces. I think the offense takes a big jump forward this year. We'll see how that O-line holds up, which I think will be fine. But for them, man, I mean, look at their schedule. It doesn't really scare you too much. I mean, you see Notre Dame. It's kind of fun to see them, 2 SEC teams that they got on their schedule already off the wham. So they're trying to bolster their schedule a little bit for whatever reason. But you see, I mean, you look at their schedule, and if we just base their schedule off what we saw last year, I mean, you go through the first, about 6 weeks, only team to see there is Notre Dame. You know what I mean? The only team to see is Notre Dame. Florida, who are they going to be? Arkansas, who are they going to be? We kind of talk about them. LSU, who are they going to be? Missouri, who are they going to be? South Carolina, who are they going to be? Their schedule is very manageable. This is a team I could see easily having a real shot to run the table this season and go undefeated. So,
hold on. That schedule does not look very manageable to me. They got Notre Dame, who we all know Notre Dame is going to be good. Auburn is going to be good this season too.
I think so.
Mississippi State, maybe not, but we know Florida is definitely going to be very good. Arkansas, we just talked about them, and they have to go to Arkansas. That's not the easiest place to play. And they're probably going to have to go to Death Valley at night. That's not easy. That's a very, very good football team, too. South Carolina was good last season. I think that they'll be good again this year. Texas, we all know what Texas is. They get them at the end of the season. That's a rivalry game. And then this year they had to go to Austin. They just lost, in a College Station last season. I don't think that schedule looks very manageable at all. That looks like a gauntlet to me, Pete.
I mean, it definitely could be. And, a few of these teams are actually going to make our list today. But I'm just saying, if you based off last year, right? Auburn wasn't very good last year. Mississippi State wasn't very good last year. Florida got good kind of late in the season. Arkansas was a decent team. I mean, LSU, that's a solid team. Missouri, who were they? South Carolina was a solid team. I just look at it based off of last year. If these teams just perform pretty much how they did last year, I think this is a very manageable schedule, especially with what we think A&M could be this year.
So their SEC schedule, they're going to play the exact same SEC teams from last season. And, well, we already know that they lost to Notre Dame. That was the first game of the season last year. They lost to South Carolina. They lost to Auburn. And they also lost to Texas. So, 4 of the teams on their schedule they lost to last year. So if you base it off of last year, I mean, I don't know. I mean, they were all close games, right? Like they didn't really those daggum Gamecocks kind of blew them out. That game was 44-20. So, I mean, I don't know. I think, like, I understand what you're saying, Pete. I just would not call that a very manageable schedule. They're going to have their hands full, but obviously we think that they could be up to the task. That's why we got them on this list. But, what do you think that they would maybe need to, maybe get better at the most for them to, let's say, go win like 10 games with this schedule?
Well, they need to get more consistent on the defensive side of the ball. I think they're talented really at all 3 levels. But they just have to do a better job defensively, I think, whether that's stopping the run, stopping the pass. Their secondary wasn't the best last season. I know they gave some big plays and were susceptible, to giving up some things over the top. So I think they can get better on that side of the ball, whether that's creating more pressure, getting better up front, which they're really good up front, in my opinion, last year. But you can always get better as far as getting pressure and stuffing the run. Try to make teams more one-dimensional, take the run away, force teams to try to throw it over your head. And then just be better in the secondary, I think, is really, really where they should focus their attention on. Like I said, this is year 2 for them, Mike Elko. So, he's a really good coach. I think he did a great job year 1. I just expect them to take such a big jump from year 1 to year 2, which is why I think I think they're better than probably I think just from a talent perspective, they're better than every team on their schedule except for Texas. That's a huge advantage to have is to be a more talented team. I think they're going to have that for the majority of the season.
I think so too. You could maybe argue that LSU's probably up there, but the thing about it is I would take Mike Elko over Brian Kelly is just as far as being a on the field coach and things like that. So, we will see. I definitely think that they could be one of the teams, P, that could win the whole doggone thing. Just because they added some real dudes and they already had a good base of talent. But yeah, so we will see. But to me, that's one of the tougher schedules out there. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is the Auburn Tigers, excuse me. So they went 5-7 last year. They finished number 13 in the SEC. They had the number 29 offense and the number 31 defense. So right within that 30 range, which I'm not saying that 30 is where you have to be, or, that's not good enough if you want to be a championship caliber team. But it's interesting because that's a roster, P, that I didn't feel like was overly talented. I think that they had some tools. But, the quarterback, the main problem was with the offense. And, a guy like Coach Freeze, his offenses have pretty much always been good except for this last little stint right here with Auburn up to this point. Can they get it figured out now that they're going to have a guy like Jackson Arnold transferring in that I think is perfect for that offensive system? You've already got guys like Cam Coleman, big old 6'3". This is going to be his second year inside of that system. They've, adding several pieces. They do a great job inside of that transfer portal. But I think that just based off of kind of like, what they've done in the offseason, what they looked like last year, what we think that they're going to end up being at, this is another team that we just talked about versus those Aggies. Man, they could potentially be good enough to beat anybody on their schedule. But what do you like about the Auburn Tigers?
Well, first off, it starts for me with Hugh Freeze, man. He's a guy that we just believe in. We saw what he did with Ole Miss and what he did with Liberty. I mean, I think he's a really good coach. And, I guess whatever his off-the-field issues that he had, people kind of look at him in a negative light. But I just think he's a really good football coach and a really good recruiter. So I'm always going to kind of give Auburn the benefit of the doubt. I think, he's been kind of hamstrung by his quarterback situation. That was a big head scratcher last season. Why didn't he go get a quarterback in the portal? He trusted Peyton Thorne. And I think if he had a better quarterback, this team would have been much better. You talk about a team that was close in a lot of games. I mean, they were right there in a lot of games, but the record finishes up, 5-7, wherever it was. So, they're a player or two away from winning, 8-9 games last year. So this is a team I feel really good about. I think Hugh Freeze will continue to get that thing trending in the right direction. They've recruited well, despite some of the, on-field lack of success that they've had. You add in a guy like Jackson Arnold. Can he kind of get his mojo back and become the guy he was kind of recruited to be out of high school? I think he can, like you said, perfect system for him. Kind of a dual threat type guy, but also has a good arm. Eric Singleton out of Georgia Tech, man, he was probably my favorite receiver in the portal this year. He's an absolute dog, so I think him coming is going to be huge for those guys. And then the two offensive line pieces they added. I mean, you pretty much have your two anchors right there at tackle. You get Xavier Chaplin coming out of Virginia Tech, who's played a lot of football for those guys. And then Mason Murphy out of USC, I believe, another guy played a lot of football for those guys as well. So I think you have your two kind of anchors there. O-line should be solid. You give Jackson Arnold an explosive playmaker to go along with Cam Coleman, who we think could have a big-time breakout year this season, having a quarterback that can probably get him the ball more effectively than Peyton Thorne did. I feel good about this team, man. Like I said, they were really close in a lot of games last year. I think go back 2 years ago, I think they took Georgia down to the wire. So, and even this past year, I think they gave Georgia a pretty good game early, but just kind of ran out of gas there in that game. So, yeah, man, I think this team that people are sleeping on, and it not surprise me at all to see them really make a push to go out here and win, or at least make it to Atlanta for that championship game this year.
Yeah, I mean, I would not be shocked to see Auburn, sitting there. I honestly wouldn't, just because with that system that Coach Freeze likes to run, if you think back to when he was with Ole Miss, and I think that they beat Alabama with Nick Saban like 2 years back to back, which at that time, like nobody was doing that. That might still be maybe the only time that's happened. I'm not sure, but either way, their offensive line started to get good, but Coach Freeze didn't come in with a good offensive line. It's his system. So while the offensive line kind of felt like that was an issue last year, I think more of that was on Peyton Thorne. And now as you bring in the Jackson Arnold with a much better offensive line, I just think that they're going to be very difficult to stop. They're doing some things on defense that you have to like. And, man, look, if they can get things going, even if they come close, like if they sniff it this season, I can promise you Auburn will be a team that for the next 3 to 4 seasons as long as Coach Freeze stays there, we'll consistently be in the SEC championship just because all they need is just to kind of, get people to buy in just a little bit more because they'll go out, spend their money. They have really good systems and things like that. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do coming up in 2025. But the next team that I want to talk about right here, y'all, is going to be the South Carolina Gamecocks. And, we saw how good they looked last year. That was a shock, P. I did not think that they was going to end up looking as good as they did, especially towards the end of the year. But they ended up, they finished 9-4, which is number 8 in the SEC. They had the number 45 offense, the number 16 defense. And, having guys like Sellers playing quarterback for you, I think he might have missed a game or two, kind of got banged up. But, man, listen, 6'3", like 245 pounds. And he can run like a daggum deer. He'll truck you. For me, looking at their offense, P, just felt like, man, they've got some of the biggest, fastest, strongest, meanest skill players in the entire country. It just felt like at every single skill spot, they had guys that were huge. Like they also got Harbor, wide receiver, 6'5", 235 pounds, almost running 23 miles an hour. That's like Calvin Johnson, and he ain't afraid to, hurt you. You know what I'm saying? So I like how that team is being built. I think that they're going to be a real problem for anybody moving forward because the offensive line, I don't think that it was great necessarily with talent, but they're going out there, adding those pieces. They're just going to get stronger there. The defense was what really made that team work, though. I would say that there were 2 teams last season, P, that I watched, and I say they attacked the line of scrimmage like no other teams. Number 2 is Tennessee for me. Number 1 is the South Carolina Gamecocks. Bringing back Stewart at end. Had a great season as a freshman. I think he had like 6.5 sacks or something like that. But he's coming back. They're adding some more pieces there. I just, they're adding some linebacker. I just think that this team, I think that this team has what it takes to be another one that we could talk about. Hey, they could win the SEC or at least be in that conference title game, and you wouldn't be shocked by it. But what do you like about South Carolina?
Man, I absolutely love these guys. Man, it's a team that I don't think anybody wants to see them towards the latter half of 2024. Like nobody wants. If they would have snuck into some playoffs, their matchup nobody wanted. They're an explosive team, and it just kind of makes you wonder. Like, man, where are these guys come from? Like when you watch them play, like they're like just the eyeball test. You talk about the eyeball test. This is a team that passed the eyeball test, especially on the defensive side of the ball and offensive side of the ball too. Like it's like where are these guys coming from? And everybody looks big, fast, physical, strong. You talk about Dylan Stewart. I mean, 6.5 sacks. I would make the argument that for me, if I could have handpicked any edge rusher in the whole country last year, say, hey, who's your one guy you're gonna take? It probably been him. True freshman. The way to me, he was almost unblockable. He just has a different first step, a different gear. And I mean, they got other guys that are kind of close to him as well. So that's what really makes it scary. So for them, man, it should be more consistent. I think they're kind of an up and down type of team. So like I look at their schedule, there's no reason they shouldn't start that thing. What 5-0? You know what I mean? They should be 5-0 when they head to LSU. October 11th. So, but South Carolina, we've seen in the past, like they'll kind of drop, they'll drop one to a Virginia Tech, or maybe they'll let a Vandy or Mizzou, the team that probably shouldn't beat them. They'll let them beat them, and then they'll go out there, a couple of weeks and they'll go beat Alabama. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the type of team that then. I think for them to take the next step, it's got to be consistent, be the teams you should be, and then continue to play at the level you always play up against when you play against those kind of the top dogs in the conference, if you will. But love this team. I love Sellers. I think adding Aaron Nolan gives you that solid backup option as well.
Man.
So, I mean, that's
crazy. That's crazy that they got Sellers. Then you got to deal with Aaron Nolan. That's ridiculous, dude.
Yeah. So we'll see if Beamer and his bunch, if they somehow try to package those guys up and maybe give Aaron Nolan some pre-designed reps or whatever each game. But, man, I like this team a lot. And I think the schedule, I think they can at least get a hot start before they really hit their gauntlet.
That's the thing, man. That's another schedule that the back half of it is just ridiculous. Yeah. It's back to back to back. My goodness, that's tough. They're going to have to – so after they play Bama, they have to go to Ole Miss. Then they got to go to Texas A&M. And, oh, by the way, at the very end of the season – you got your rival Clemson, who, I kind of feel like South Carolina, I kind of feel like they have Clemson's number. But, yeah, that is a very, very tough schedule to finish it off. But I wouldn't be surprised if that matchup in Baton Rouge versus LSU is in a top 10 matchup, because I think that they're going to get off to such a hot start. So, we will see how everything plays out. But I think that we're both on the same page, that we love how they're built. We love how they're trending. And, we think that they will probably end up shocking. So I don't know if it's going to be a shocker at this point.
Yeah.
But I just saw that take notice.
They're almost not even a sleeper team. I think people
Yeah.
are on to these guys, but yeah, they're definitely a team that I would have my eye on for sure.
So I also think that if they would have made it to the playoffs this season, they would have won at least one game. They might have, there was one of the teams that, like you said, nobody wanted to play them. I could see them finding a way to beat anybody in the playoffs last year. Honestly speaking, it's because it's such a tough matchup with guys that are that big, that fast. And, I would say one of the other things that they might want to work on is maybe open up their offensive playbook some. It could have been because Sellers was still young, but I think that that's something that kind of held them back. It was very obvious what they were going to do, but it was just very difficult to stop it because those guys are hard to bring down. So we'll see. Do they get things opened up a little bit more this year? If they do, definitely watch out for South Carolina. Let's come on to the last team right here, the Florida Gators, who, man, you want to talk about a team just like Carolina, finishing really, really strong. They ended up finishing 8-5 with the toughest schedule, I think, by far in the entire country. So they finished number 10 in the SEC. A lot of folks said that they wouldn't even make it to a bowl. Most places said, what the over-under was like 3.5 wins. So I think that Napier doing that with his, pretty much coaching for his job, and almost all the teams that we looked at and talked about today, they all had a player from Florida, I'm saying, pretty much all of them. And just a mass exodus with that program, but they still just have so much talent there. Florida's always going to have a ton of talent, and they haven't really brought in too many players. So they lost 18 to the portal. They only brought in 5. Again, that might sound like, dang, they need to go out and do some more, which, yes, they do. But I still feel like that roster is still loaded with so much talent. So with all those things being said, what do you think about Florida, Pete?
Their team, we were pretty high on them last year, especially after we got into the season, kind of watched them play. The thing that hurts them is their freaking schedule is brutal. Now, it doesn't start as hard as it did last year. I can't remember who they had game 1 last year, but I feel like I think it was Miami, maybe week 1.
Miami, yeah.
Yeah, so they kind of can roll into it a little bit. South Florida's not a gimme win. Coach Alex Golesh down there, that's going to be a game. They're going to come after you. LSU, Miami, Texas, A&M, Mississippi State, Georgia, Kentucky, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Florida. And is Florida State back, or are they going to be the same as they were last year? Their schedule is so tough. It makes it hard for them. It's tough. But if they can somehow manage this schedule, if they can get off to a pretty good start, maybe sneak out some wins against, LSU, Miami, Texas, which I don't think Miami's going to be the same team they were last year. When you look at their schedule, their schedule's tough, but, man, you got year 2 of that quarterback. I forget his freaking name.
Lagway.
Yeah, Lagway, man. He was probably, to me, the most impressive freshman quarterback in the country last year. He was very, very impressive.
Sure, it was either him or it was Sellers.
Yeah, Sellers, but Sellers was a redshirt, I believe.
Oh, okay. Was he a redshirt freshman? Okay.
But yeah, you're right though. Yeah, Sellers as well. So yeah, it's either those two guys. But Lagway, man, he kind of has that it factor. Maybe like a little bit of a Russell Wilson type to him, where he's gonna make plays, man. He's gonna make plays. So like him a lot, especially second year for him. Man, he's gonna be a guy. Early Heisman watch list for me. And I think they still have some pieces, man. He had a guy like the receiver, that guy right there, Michael Sturdivant. He's a guy, big time guy. I got him. Where's he coming from? He's coming from I forget where he comes from. I want to say it was like a Southern Miss or something like that, or it's like a smaller school. But he's a big-bodied receiver, can make plays for you.
Sorry to cut you off, but he came from UCLA.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah, UCLA guy. So
but nobody was really watching UCLA, so it just what I'm saying. So it seems like they're a smaller school now, because they were really bad last season. But that's another one. I know we haven't gotten there yet, but that's another one that they could be a potential sleeper. But anyway, carry on.
Yeah. He's gonna help them out a lot, man. They still got number 3, I forget his name, but they got him coming back as well, big time receiver for him. So they got some pieces. You add in Harrison Bailey as kind of the depth piece for you, which is kind of interesting that he would transfer here, kind of knowing that he wouldn't be the starter, then like a junior, whatever he is now. But and then I love the guy they got from UMass, Kofi Asare, however you pronounce his name. I butchered it, but he's a big time. I think he was a true freshman last year. Comes in about what does he go, about 6'6", something like that, like 6'5", 6'6", 240, athletic, and get out the edge for you. So add some good pieces. For them, it's going to come down to, can they manage that schedule, which is a gauntlet. We'll see. They win 7 games this past season with pretty much the same schedule. 8 games with that same schedule. That's a huge win in my opinion, by far toughest schedule in the country. So see if they can manage it this year.
Yeah, and you know what? One of their biggest assets last season was their front seven on defense, especially that line. Now they did lose several players, but they still have more. And I think that bringing back a guy like Tyreek Sapp is huge because I want to say that he led them in sacks last season. But you want to talk about a guy that can play almost any technique, almost any technique on that line. And I want to say he might be Warren Sapp's cousin or nephew or something like that. And he plays like it. He is a big, strong, fast, twitchy, physical dude. And, I think that that's huge, for him to be coming back. And, they've got several other players. But, yeah, I think that their defense is going to – I don't know if I can say it's going to take a step forward. A lot of the younger players are going to have to play for Florida. They're going to have to grow up quickly. So that's kind of a good thing for them as they're still building. But really, if you look at their offensive system, it's so tough to stop with all the misdirection, all the pre-snap movement. And now that Lagway, like you said, P, is getting second year inside of this system, more comfortable, with guys like Wilson. That's the number 3 at wide receiver. Adding some pieces to that, going to have a very solid offensive line. I just think that it's a tough schedule. But I think that they are built to potentially be able to handle it. I think that they could, as tough as that schedule looks, I think that maybe they could finish with 2, I'd say maybe 3 losses, which should put them right in the conversation of being a, fringe sort of a playoff team. But they're one that their record might not show how good they actually are because I really, sincerely feel like they could beat anybody in the country as things sit right now next season. But that's going to be it, P, unless you have any final thoughts to share with the good people out there.
No, man, nothing really. We're just excited for this season. These are, like you said, we could have picked those other teams we could have picked as well, but these are the 5 teams we think this combination of their roster, what's returning, coming out of the momentum they had last season, head into this next season. These are the 5 teams we think have a chance to really make some noise that maybe people are kind of sleeping on this year.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, thank y'all so much for watching. Thank you for sticking all the way to the end. Please do make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.